structure through policies and procedures, a management system. You don't need to establish it through lines and boxes. Does that make sense? In other words, we have a propensity in Australia, and I might add in many countries overseas, where we have a box there with the marketing, operations and admin box, and then a row of boxes under them, and lines and all the rest of it. And we structure the business. I find that if you do away with the lines and boxes and have good policies and procedures in your company that guide how people will act and react and do their job, you don't need lines and boxes. People don't need to be put on top of each other to get the job done. You could actually all sit in a circle if you had to. But if there are good policies and procedures, the ground rules as to how the business is going to be run, you actually don't need structure in the traditional sense. The military has a command structure which is very different. That's a delegation of command, and it talks about platoons and companies and battalions, etc., etc. But it's more of a functional exercise in that they can employ a platoon of people and understand its capability, its firepower, etc., etc. It's not a structural sense that binds it together. Policies and the procedures in the military and the esprit de corps and all the rest of it bind the military together. Spend a little time accounting for process. We get bound up in processes. We get all concerned about how things should be done in terms of mapping out process and not necessarily the outcomes we're seeking to achieve. Remember, I get back to that example with the Germans and the French. The German army had very little process. Everyone knew that Paris was the goal. Everyone knew we had to get there as quickly as possible, because if we captured Paris, the entire French army would collapse. And there was very little process. You become less prescriptive. You don't start telling people how something should be done, but more about what the objective is. You can see what I'm alluding to. You start building these blocks, and the sort of trust and understanding starts to form. Because you're far more trusting in an organisation if you know what the bloody hell is going on, why it's going on, you've had the opportunity to contribute, you understand that there are some rules to the game, the policies and the procedures, you're given some latitude in what you can do and can't do, you can talk to any bugger in the bloody office you want to talk to in a positive context, and you're encouraged to take that responsibility. It builds the sort of thing that so there's no do this, do that, do this. It all starts to form in an organisation. The more you start building it. Trust. I mean, an interesting one here, I say trust no budget. There was an interesting exercise I was involved in Chicago many years ago, where I was working with a company, traditional company, had a budget for everything. Everyone had a budget. There was a budget for everything. And the marketing folks had a budget of about 6 point something mil or whatever it was, blah, 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 blah. And I raised the point to them, do the marketing people feel constrained by their budget? And they said, oh, yeah, we need more money, we want to do this, we want to do that, we want to do this. We've got no bloody money, and the budget was a real constraint. So I said to the CEO, next month, remove their budget. And he just looked at me. And I said, do you trust them? He said, yes, I do. We've spent years building a good team. Do they know what we're trying to achieve? Well, yeah, we're doing this, doing that, good. Do they see their role in the big game? Yes, they do. So I said, take the budget off them. Tell them you can spend anything you like within reason. And he did it. And do you know what? 2 months later, they did all the things they wanted to do in terms of marketing. They developed a new website, they got the new brochures done, etc., etc., etc. And they actually spent less money than what was originally budgeted. Now, they didn't know that. They didn't know what the original budget was. The point I'm making is, it was remarkable that when you give and you trust people, and they understand where you're going and why, they understand that their role in it and their responsibility, they have total trust in the organisation and in the team around them, they act responsibly. They didn't have to be told, you can't spend more than blah, 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 blah. Of course, they spent more here, but less here, etc., etc., etc. And they didn't know what the budget was. They spent less. it was a real eye-opening exercise for me about trust and how trust builds confidence. And if you've got the right people and they have unity of purpose, they know their responsibility, they can communicate within the organisation in a positive way, etc., etc., they act responsibly. Interesting exercise. Incentivise the team. You know, again, Australian organisations talk about incentivising people. Well, if they know where you're going and why, they see their role in it, they take responsibility for what they're going to do, why shouldn't they share in the rewards? Why not? Why aren't more organisations operating profit incentive schemes that you'll take home on an annual basis, 4% of the profit? Why not? Would that incentivise you to work harder? Get involved? The money wouldn't. You'd be one of the very, very few. Wouldn't be a bad reward though, would it? Yeah. Then at the end of the day, if the company makes $1 million profit, then I'm going to put 40 grand in the bank for you. No. It'd motivate me. It would recognise me for the efforts I put in. And I would work 24/7 to try and achieve those goals. And at the end of the day, if the company realised a profit and everyone was putting on the road, yeah, I would see that as nice recognition. That would be me. Employment contracts based on contribution to business outcomes. Tie the employment contract to your contribution to the business. Simple stuff. At the end of the day, you start empowering people in terms of what their responsibilities are and their accountabilities are. Then at the end of the day, frame their contracts accordingly. Frame it differently than the standard terms and conditions. Base it on the company's outcomes and what the company's seeking to achieve. It binds them into the company. And if they don't like it, you've probably got the wrong person. A couple of other little things. The team conducts interviews and assessments and decides on new hires. So if you've got a marketing team of half a dozen people and they need a new sales guy, and the marketing team know that their responsibility is to achieve a certain percentage of sales throughout the year, and they accept that responsibility, they understand their role in that, then why shouldn't they hire and be responsible for the performance of the new salesman? Why does the CEO need to get involved? Interesting. You can see what I'm doing? I'm pushing stuff down. Pushing it down to the operator level. You know, in the military, when a new soldier arrives into his unit, the first step is to be accepted by his platoon. First step. And the platoon will give him the rounds of the table like you wouldn't believe, or her. And if the platoon says, this guy doesn't fit, I accepted their decision. Why? Because they're going to have to fight with this guy on the ground. They're going to have to depend on him or her for their lives. If they can't work with him or they just feel he doesn't fit, I accepted that decision. Same thing in business. Same thing in business. Different context. Push the response. If you're going to be accountable to drive our marketing targets throughout the year, why shouldn't you have the responsibility of selecting your team? What? Office layout. You know, again, we talked about open offices and no paper offices and all this bloody crap you read in books and things like that. The point being, if you think differently about leadership, if you think differently about who you are and what you're trying to achieve and what you're trying to practice, you'd have to think differently about the way we traditionally lay our offices out, with little cubby boxes and rooms and tables lined up like bloody school rooms and all that sort of bits and pieces. One of the best layouts I ever saw was overseas in China. They had a circular office. They had all the desks in a circle facing inward, and they had team breakout areas where the marketing team or the operations team could get up and go to a specific area of computers and sit and discuss and look at each other. And they had one or two sort of little confidential rooms that they could conduct interviews in, etc., etc. It is amazing how the dynamics changed when everyone's office, like they had a circle here. And the CEO sat at one of the tables and did their work. It was really interesting dynamics. And I must admit, it really generated team, trust, comradeship, no secrets. Everything was open and people could communicate far more readily. And if a team had to break away to discuss a marketing campaign or something, they simply moved to a table outside the circle over there and sat around that table and talked about their marketing issue. Interesting stuff. Action-biased meetings and agendas and minutes. Too often I go to meetings and I see an agenda there, but there's no action items on the agenda. It's updates and it's bloody reports and all this other crap. If you're going to hold a meeting to achieve something. The agenda should be, we're going to solve the sales target problem. We're going to solve the IT issue in the office. We're going to fix the infrastructure problem we're having. We're going to decide on what we're going to do next month. There've got to be action items. And when you write the minutes up, the minutes have got to say, you're going to do this with this amount of money, and it's going to be completed by then, and you and you are going to assist him. That's how minutes should be written. But if you have a look at many organisations, they are just fluff. Gets back to that bias of action. You're going to meet and talk, do something and act on something, or don't do it. Virtual office. A lot of people are moving towards virtual office these days, and I guess it's that flow on from the whole trust, everyone understanding what needs to be achieved, what my role is, what I'm accountable for, etc. If that's the case, then you can work anywhere. And if you need to come together during the day or during the week, then you organise it. You can either do it by Skype, you can come together in the office, or more importantly, come together in a social setting. Why have a meeting in the office? Why not secure 2 or 3 tables in the nice coffee shop around the corner and have your meeting mid-afternoon when there's no crowd there and enjoy a cup of coffee and a bloody pastry and have your meeting? Get the team out of their space, get people talking, get into a different environment, make it pleasant. Still action focused, but make it pleasant. A couple of other little bits and pieces. Move from working relationships to cultivating friendships. And I get back to this, I guess the point that you raised, is that I think at the end of the day we need to think differently about the people we work with. We talk about working relationships. I reckon that's just bullshit. What we need to start cultivating in our organisations is friendships. Now, I may have been an officer, and my troop sergeant was a sergeant, and in the military, that's a very big difference in rank, but he was my friend. Now, I didn't call him mate, or collar, or Bill, I called him sergeant. And he didn't call me Mike, he called me boss, but we were friends. Now, we didn't go and get on Terps together every night of the week, but we were friends. And we'd fight for each other. And if necessary, we'd die for each other. We were friends. Now, that's born out of hardship, it's born out of trust, it's born out of open communication, it's born out of respect. He respected me for what I was and what I did and what I knew, and I did the same for him. How many civilian organisations do you see that? Very, very few. And then the friendships are often very select. Why couldn't we have, particularly in small to medium enterprises where basically you're all sitting in one goddamn room, why don't we cultivate friendships rather than working relationships? And a friendship doesn't need to be familiar. You don't need to be familiar. The sergeant wasn't familiar with me, in a sense. He didn't have his arm around me and saying, oh, g'day, mate. There was none of that. But we were friends and we understood each other. That concept goes to that whole trust building, team building, comradeship, esprit de corps. It's the basis of it. But you rarely see friendships being generated in an office. You might get one-on-one. The receptionist is great friends with the marketing lady or something. You might get a little bit of one-on-one occasionally, but that's it. And again, it requires our leaders to think very, very, very differently than what they're thinking at the moment. We're running out of time, guys. Finally, you, the leader. All right, we sort of boil a little bit of that down. Look and act the part, inspire your team, be accountable. These are simple stuff, but really do you see the process? Look and act the part. If you are the chief executive, look the part of the chief executive, act the part of a chief executive. Inspire your team. Don't be one of these bloody mealy-mouthed bloody, oh, I don't know what we're going to do, I suppose we're going to do. Or one of these characters that get in the office and close the door and everything's a bloody secret in the company and all the rest of it. No one knows what the CEO's doing or why, blah, 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 blah. Inspire your team. And how are you going to inspire the team? Is to be out there with the team. With the team. In the trenches. Working as hard, if not longer. Practice and perfect your public speaking. I'm yet to meet an effective leader that can't talk. You've got to be able to communicate. If you're not good at getting up and communicating and expressing yourself and getting your point across and inspiring the team and motivating the team, getting up in front of these seasoned, old, gnarly, well-experienced soldiers and NCOs. Oh my God. And the worst part about it, I had to give them a leadership lecture, which made it even worse. And I was petrified. But the point being, the only way you learn is to get out there. Get to Toastmasters, get to organisations, get to any of these places and practice your public speaking, and particularly if English is your second language. Even more important, because you're going to be talking to Anglophile, and you won't be able to speak with a long, thick accent where people don't understand every second word that's coming out of your mouth. That's just reality. So not a comment on anyone, it's reality. You've got to practice, practice, practice. Without communicating, you can't be a leader. Get the right people around you, engage with your team, be seen at the coalface. I think we've covered that. If you haven't got the right team around you, get rid of them. Get rid of them. You don't need to put up with people who don't want to share your vision, take responsibility for their role, are not prepared to communicate and express themselves within the business, have no bias for action, and don't want to be a team member. Who the bloody hell would put up with that? Get rid of them instantly. Kindly, friendly, thank you, you don't fit, on your horse. Get the right people or it will never work. And there are some people, no matter how hard you try, it doesn't work. You can try and try and try and try. If they don't want to get it, put them on their bike. Work hard, first in, last out, set an example. First in, last out. I don't think I've ever worked a job that I haven't been the first to open the office and one of the last to leave the office. That is your responsibility. Set the example. If you expect your team to work hard and well-focused, you need to be seen to be working hard and well-focused. Collaborate and act, break the rules and disrupt. Good leaders, I've found, are disruptors. They just don't accept anything. Everything that comes their way, they question. Everything they look at, they try and think of doing it differently. And no matter what you say, they'll sit there and they'll critically analyse it and they'll say, what evidence have you got of that? But what if we did this and not that? What do you think we'd do? So be critical. Be disruptive in that sense. And then be prepared to act. Think outside the box as best you can. Keep people on their toes. You often hear of good leaders. They say, you say, oh, how's it going, etc. Oh, Jesus, the bloody CEO, God, we're flat out keeping up with him. 1 minute he's there, next minute he's here. Now we're off building rocket ships, and next week we're going to go and do this, etc., etc. It's inspiring stuff when you see leaders really on the top page of their game. Develop a presence, engage with the industry and community. That presence is about you yourself. It's not just about your company. Get out there as a leader, in amongst your industry. Be seen to be contributing to your industry. Be seen to be contributing to the community. Be a true leader. Leadership doesn't start at 9 o'clock when you walk into the office and finish at 5 o'clock that afternoon when you walk out. Be a true leader. Be a true leader in society. Be a leader within the industry you happen to be with. Be proactive in getting yourself engaged. Develop a presence out there. It's more than just your company at the end of the day. And the last thing, the point I'll make, because we are running out of time, unfortunately, is look after yourself. One of the problems that I experienced in the military was young officers burning themselves out. That at the end of the day, they would not look after themselves. That they were worried about their soldiers, they were worried about their NCOs, they were worried about the mission, they were worried about pleasing me, they were worried about all the sorts of things we're talking about, and fail to look after themselves. Well, a leader who falls over is not a good leader. A leader who burns out is not a good leader. A leader who drops dead through a heart attack is not a good leader. You've got to look after yourself. And you've got to set that example for the people you're leading, for the people in your organisation and team. You've got to look after yourself. You've got to make sure that you're remunerated correctly, that you're getting paid for the effort you put in. Don't undersell yourself as a leader. Look after your health, look after your family, because it'll flow through. If you're feeling good about yourself, about your family, about your friends, about what you've been paid, you're comfortable, then that will project into the office and people will see it as such. Guys, we're well and truly over time. I've taken quite a bit of your time this afternoon. It's a bit of divergence from accounting and bookkeeping and all the rest of it, but I hope in that space, albeit in the very short time we've had together this afternoon, that I've given you just a little bit to think about when it comes to leadership and organisations, and potentially some of the things that we could learn from the military who have been at this game for many, many years. So thank you for your attention this afternoon. I look forward to catching up with you.
Thanks, Mark.
Everyone, as same with the last time, if you can fill up the feedback and the quiz, it would be good. And we have a quick 5 minutes break, so we're gonna start the next session at 2:25. Thanks. Yeah, we're going to start at 2:25.